Hi guys, today we continue our retelling of the TV series Silo, episodes 3 through 5. For the recap of the first 2 episodes, please follow the link in the description.
From now on, you shadow Knox.
Yes, ma'am.
People living in the bunker discovered strange 90-meter-high machines on the ground, remnants of a past civilization, and realized that it was with their help that their shelter was created. Hovering over the abyss, Juliet decides not to risk it and returns to the platform, where she pulls out alcohol and commemorates her deceased friend, then puts his watch on her wrist. Mayor Ruth is also saddened by what has happened and asks Deputy Sheriff Marnes to find Juliet as soon as possible, who at this time is recovering, overcoming a hangover. But then the dishes start to vibrate, a sure sign of a generator breakdown, and Juliet rushes to her workplace. At the same time, Marnes notices that Ruth's thermos in the bag is leaking and hands her his own. Running to the spot, Juliet roughly pushes her young assistant away from the generator, causing her boss's indignation. She insists on a complete shutdown of the generator. If it breaks down, no one will be able to fix it. And then the dungeon will simply perish. Meanwhile, Ruth and Marnes come to the head of bunker IT industry, the second man after the mayor. The man is not thrilled with Juliet's candidacy for sheriff. She stole duct tape for the needs of her service. The chief judge is also against it, but she was chosen by Holston. After the conversation, Ruth and Marnes go to the middle level, where the woman is warmly greeted, as they love her very much. The mayor traditionally visits newborns and then starts a conversation with Dr. Nicholson, Juliet's father, who explains that his daughter ended up downstairs because she loved mechanics from childhood and that they don't keep in touch. Meanwhile, Juliet is telling Marta about her horror of the mass water below, while the mayor and the assistant are dining in the park. Marnes admits he's ready to retire when Judge Sims' assistant appears in front of them, who has his own candidate for the sheriff's position. And downstairs, the shaking starts again, and the mayor witnesses how Juliet works, after which she meets with her. Juliet is stunned by the offer. Her job is much more important, and she doesn't want to be the sheriff. The mayor hands her Holston's sheriff's badge, left specifically for her. Juliet discovers an engraving on the back of the badge and catches up with the mayor. She is ready to accept the position, but before leaving, she has to fix the generator, which needs to be temporarily turned off. The mayor has to agree. A warning is spread throughout the bunker, which frightens people. Juliet explains what exactly is broken and how to fix it, but they have only an hour for everything. Repairmen carefully develop a work plan, because if something goes wrong, there could be casualties. Juliet takes her assistant with her, which delights the boy. And then darkness falls in the bunker. The generator is stopped, its external panels are removed. The repairmen are lifted to the site of the breakdown. Juliet finds a broken blade, disconnects it and lowers it down. The rest they have to fix in place. Meanwhile, Ruth and Marnes worry about a possible accident. If they fail to fix the generator, groundwater will rise and people will inevitably perish. Then Ruth confesses that she's ready to leave her position and settle next to a retiree. Marnes kisses her, and the situation at the generator heats up. Juliet has to go inside the machine to cool it down with water. She's completely overwhelmed when the blade is finally put in place. Exhausted, choking Juliet is pulled out, the generator is started, and it starts working as it should, which causes jubilation throughout the bunker. The lights come on, which means life goes on. After everything, Juliet comes to Marta and gives her the antique found by George, asking her to figure out what it is. Meanwhile, it's time for her to go upstairs to start her new job. She says goodbye to her friends and, flipping Holston's badge, reads the word truth on the back, while the mayor signs her resignation. But then the woman feels unwell and goes to the restroom, while the assistant chooses wine for the evening. But the noise of a fall is heard from behind the door, and opening the door, he finds Ruth on the floor with a bloodied mouth. Juliet remembers how as a child she helped resuscitate her brother after a bout of illness and how she rejoiced when the boy recovered. Then she is called to the mayor's office. She goes there and becomes a witness to an argument between Bernard, Marnes, and Sims. Marnes is sure that a criminal poisoned Ruth's water in the thermos with rat poison somewhere on the middle level. Everyone knew that the mayor was going on a bunker tour. And everyone knew that the one going takes a bottle from a companion's backpack simply because it's inconvenient to reach into his own. And if Ruth's bottle hadn't leaked, he would be the one lying on the floor now. Then the men notice Juliet. Bernard is forced to accept her without an oath, for he too is assuming the position of mayor, abiding by the charter without going through an election. The woman sees Marnes grieving and again recalls her childhood. Her father asks her to pack up her mother's and brother's belongings, as they might be needed by someone. In the present, Juliet walks through the dining room, noticing a lone man sitting at a table when she is called by the sheriff's secretary. The woman escorts her to the office and explains the rules. Juliet asks for George's case to be brought in and examines the office and the cell, from whose window you can see the tree under which Holston and his wife found their final rest. Then, going into her new dwelling, she remembers again her childhood, when she brought her family's belongings to the sorting point, where the receiver sympathized with her. Later, the girl prepares her own food and then repairs a long broken chair. And then, when her father arrives, she breaks down. Why is she experiencing all of this alone? The girl cries, hugging her brother's toy, and the father apologizes that not everything can be fixed. Adult Juliet wakes up from a knock on the door. Bernard is ready to take her oath. Later, she searches Holston's office and learns that the sheriff left George's case on his desk specifically for her. Then comes a message about an incident with Marnes. She runs to the middle level, where the former deputy sheriff is beating a man suspected by him of poisoning Ruth. She leads him to the dining room, where she tells him about her suspicions in George's murder case, about the fact that the sheriff promised to signal her if he found anything. And she shows the sheriff's badge. Marnes agrees to cooperate. Together, they go to a man named Kennedy, who Marnes also put on his list. The man gets into a fight. Juliet has to break them up and then provide aid to Marnes. Juliet tries to locate the hard disk that George handed to the sheriff, and Marnes suggests visiting the storage. Then he confesses that he had enough enemies wishing him dead. Seeing Ruth's portrait on his wall, she understands his true feelings and agrees to leave her post after they find the mayor's killer. The action shifts to the past, when Juliet packed her things and went down from her house, where she submitted a note asking to be accepted into the repairman, allegedly written by her father. Marta quickly understands what's going on, but the stubborn girl ends up on the clearing team. Every 5 minutes, junk is dumped here, among which one needs to find something that can be repaired, and it's very hard work. Adult Juliet is greeted by the storekeeper, but she doesn't recognize an old disc and a stack of papers among Holston's things. Back to the past again. Juliet is going to Marta, where her father is waiting for her. The girl is pleased because she gets so tired during the day that she has no time to think about the loved ones that she lost. And here she's in her place. Marta accepts the girl. In the present, Marnes rigs up a homemade punching bag and takes out all his pain on it. But then Sims knocks on the door. He found out that Marnes beat up a man who was accused of illegal trade in homemade alcohol, from which many suffered back then. And then he reports that the judge is ready to dismiss the new sheriff from her position, to which Marnes advises not to rush, for she was chosen by Holston. The sheriff herself gets acquainted with the man in the dining room. Lucas turns out to be one of those who read the play from which the woman got her name. After Sims leaves, Marnes remembers Ruth, and then hears Juliet's and Marta's conversation over the closed circuit, where the sheriff confesses that she found an assistant. And Marta mentions that she has something worth looking at. Juliet promises to drop by and goes home, where she notices a knock in the ventilation. Marnes also goes to his place, where someone attacks him in the dark. The men struggle, but the attacker takes Marnes' gun. And Juliet, opening the ventilation grate, finds inside a bag with George's real case. The woman rereads the dossier when she is called to Marnes' house, where Sims and the new sheriff's deputy, Paul Billings, are already examining the body. Bernard asks everyone into his office, but Juliet stays, conducts an inspection of the crime scene, and finds a piece of paper with a list of suspects in the deceased's pocket. Later, she suggests burying the couple together. By the charter, this is not allowed, but on the other hand, the romantic component will distract attention from the murders. And then a race to the top in memory of the mayor will be announced. People will cheer, drink beer, and get distracted. Later, the burial ceremony takes place. Ruth and Marnes are buried in the same grave. Bernard gives a speech, after which Juliet, with her inherent straightforwardness, speaks about her attitude to her appointment. But she will remain faithful to her duty to the end. In the concluding part, all who came bite off an apple, throwing the core into the grave, so that a new tree grows from the remains, giving life. Returning to her office, Juliet finds there a lawyer from the lower level, Hank, who worries about her, as indeed everyone does below. He reminds her that he is always ready to help. Later, the secretary again reminds that for her, Holston is the best sheriff. And she also understands that Juliet agreed to accept the position only to find out the truth about George's death. She's ready to help, but only for a return favor. Juliet has to find out who really killed Marnes, because justice does not concern the judge. For her, the main thing is maintaining order, so she will pin the crime on anyone available. Then they will force Juliet out, and then they will put a person pleasing to the lawyers in her place. Juliet goes to find out the circumstances of Marnes' death, and secretary advises her to take Paul with her, otherwise the woman might make a mistake, due to which the lawyers will not accept any evidence. However, stepping onto the level, she lets Paul go for lunch. In the meantime, she remembers a recent altercation between Marnes and Kennedy, whose name is on the former assistant's list, and goes to him. He's not at home, and Juliet picks the door lock, searches the apartment, and finds a box of poison and a picture of Ruth, which used to hang on Marnes' wall. And Paul, in the meantime, goes to Sims, who introduces him to Doug, a candidate for his assistant. Meanwhile, Juliet finds Kennedy, and after talking to him, takes him to a safe place, then meets with Paul, who confesses that Sims suspects a man named Ralph, whose name is also on the former assistant's list. But unexpectedly for everyone, Juliet requests a warrant for Kennedy's arrest. The secretary does not understand what is happening, and then Juliet explains. Paul got the name from the lawyers, which means that they decided to set him up. But during this search at Kennedy's, they will find the drawing and the poison, so the sheriff will appear incompetent, and they will remove her, putting Paul in her place. She runs to Kennedy's dwelling, where she meets Doug, and accusing him of planting evidence, tries to arrest him. Doug starts to run, and Julia chases after him. The race to the top, which has started, complicates everything. In the rush, Doug throws the woman over the stone railing, but she manages to grab it and hangs over the abyss. Doug tries to tear her hands away. She pulls out a knife but drops it. And when it seems that she will inevitably crash, a girl from the crowd notices her. Doug runs away, and passers-by who came to help her pull Juliet up. Meanwhile, Doug goes to Sims, to his secret apartment. He's not pleased. Doug should not know about this place. And then, learning about his failure, he asks to show a note prepared for Kennedy, where he writes about his wish to settle scores with life, and tells him about his father, who was a cleaner. The father was a silent man and never revealed his thoughts. But once, when a classmate really messed with young Sims, the bully's family suddenly moved somewhere. And once the father showed him this door and promised to take the boy as an assistant. And only now did Sims understand what his father was really doing. Doug has two faults, with George and now with Kennedy. He is ready to choose a handyman. Sims accepts his oath and then throws the man down. He does not need losers. Later, Juliet tells everything to the judge, and the note found in Doug's pocket confirms that he drew the line himself. The judge thanks the woman for her service and orders to close the cases. Bernard apologizes for not trusting her, and Juliet requests time off to go down for her things. At night, passing through the dining room, she again sees Lucas, who draws her attention to the celestial fires that are also moving in certain orbits. But no one knows what it is. Juliet goes down to Marta and asks her questions about these lights. But Marta has no idea what she's talking about. However, she's ready to show the knife that fell down to them from above. The woman is concerned about Juliet's safety and talks about the artifact that Juliet left her. But her magnifying glass is too weak, and the charter forbids making stronger ones. Marta does not understand why they can't make means to move across horizons. They don't even have regular elevators. It's strictly forbidden to increase the power of mechanisms. So for this artifact, she faces death. But Juliet does not want to drop her new case. They finally believed her and are ready to work with her. Then she learns what exactly happened to George, but for that, bait is needed. And Juliet goes to the lower cave and takes an artifact from George's box. Despite the many post-apocalyptic survival films recently made, this series stands out with its mysterious narrative and quite interesting plot twists. Who made this bunker for civilization, and why can those who went outside breathe apparently clean air? New episodes and new discoveries lie ahead.